All right, I'm here with my good buddy Texas Trey, and today we're going to be talking about Project 2025. A lot of us talk a whole lot about it and make references to it, but I thought that we really needed to dive in and talk about it and let people know what it's really about. So we're going to start off today, kind of reading from the introduction and getting Trey's reaction to it. Trey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Brand. It's good to see you. Good to be back on the show again. Appreciate you having me.
Oh, absolutely, man. It's great to see you. I went online and pulled it up, and as I started reading it, it definitely echoed everything that MAGA has been saying lately. And I don't think people truly understands, what it is they've got in mind. And so I'm going to read to you just a little bit here, and you've not heard this. I want to kind of get your blind reaction here to the intro here of Project 2025 and see what you think. It says we
All right,
want
sounds
you.
good.
Yeah, it says we want you. The 2025 presidential transition project is the conservative movement's unified effort to be ready for the next conservative administration to govern at 12 noon, January 20th, 2025. Welcome to the mission. By opening this book, you are now part of it. Indeed, one set of eyes reading these passages will be those of the 47th President of the United States, and we hope every reader will join in making the incoming administration a success. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. It says history teaches that a president's power is to implement an agenda at its apex during the administration's opening days. To execute requires a well conceived, coordinated, unified plan and a trained, committed cadre of personnel to implement it. In recent election cycles, presidential candidates normally begin transition planning in the late spring of the election year or even after the party's nomination was secured. That is too late. The federal government's complexity and growth advance at a seemingly lethargic rate every 4 hours. For conservatives to have a fighting chance to take on the administrative state and to reform our federal government, the work has to start now. The entirety of this effort is to support the next conservative president, whoever he or she may be.
Hmm. Right.
So,
Yeah. And I think we all know who that is written in mind for, right? That's got Trump's
absolutely.
name all over it.
It,
I
it
mean,
sure does.
it's ridiculous. Wow. Yeah. Project 2025 is something that I think, again, a lot of people maybe have heard floating around out there. I don't think they really understand exactly what it is, to your point. And I really strongly encourage people to go out and read it. And I know
Yeah,
um, it's pretty scary. It's pretty scary.
it really is. And this here is from the foreword by Kevin D. Roberts. I thought this paragraph kind of jumped out at me because, again, it's just all of their talking points all rolled into one. Says today America and the conservative movement are enduring an era of division and danger akin to the late 70s. Now as then, our political class has been discredited by wholesale dishonesty and corruption. Look at America under the ruling and cultural elite today. Inflation is ravaging family budgets. Drug overdose deaths continue to escalate. Children suffer the toxic normalization of transgenderism with drag queens and pornography invading their school libraries. Overseas, a totalitarian communist dictatorship in Beijing is engaged in a strategical, cultural, and economic Cold War against America's interests, values, and people, all while global elites in Washington awaken only slowly to the growing threat. So, I mean, does that not sound like it's ripped right out of Marjorie Taylor Greene's playbook? I mean, that's pretty
Oh,
much,
exactly. Exactly.
yeah,
They have manufactured a crisis where there was none. They have manufactured a war, a culture war where there was none. These things, it's absolutely ridiculous what they
yeah,
go and say in here. And it's all designed and purposed to get their base stirred up and focused on this for the sole solitary purpose of putting their party in absolute power in this
yeah,
country. That's
yeah.
really what it boils down to. And if people can't see that, I just they really need to read it.
Yeah, they really do. And I was reading earlier today that one thing they're wanting to do is take a look at the 22nd Amendment to so that Trump could be able to run for a third term. And it's funny to me how they're ready to just repeal that amendment and do away with it altogether. And they're the same people who won't budge on the Second Amendment if we bring it up. If there's so much. It's funny to me how they cherry pick the Constitution when it benefits them or when they can weaponize it against someone else. But that seems to be the path that they're on.
Oh, the hypocrisy is unreal, unreal. And what is really interesting to me is all these people that so rabidly support this and think this is a good thing and think this is a direction that the country needs to go do not have the slightest understanding or concept of the fact that once the freedom and liberties are taken away, once that power gets a foothold, it's not going to be given up. Trump or anybody else who might succeed him. And I don't understand. It's like these guns that you hold so dear, and I love the Second Amendment. I love guns.
Yeah,
You could lose that right just as quickly as we lost Roe v. Wade.
exactly.
I mean, literally stood for years, decades, and was gone literally, and almost overnight.
Yeah, I think
Trump won't do that. Trump's not going to do that.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, good,
Well, they were also telling us that that January 6th wasn't going to happen. They were also saying that. I think that people does need to be listening to what it is Trump's saying and take it seriously, because, like you said, I think that's the best point is once it's taken away, they're not going to give it back. When he says, I just want to be dictator for one day, just let me have it for one day and I'll hand it back over to you. Name me one dictator in history who did that, who was dictator for one day and then said, well, I've had enough of that. Well, you guys can have your democracy back.
I'm done now. Here, you can have it all back. It's such BS. And people they buy that line of crap, hook, line, and sinker. And they think this is a good thing because, again, Trump and his ilk and the Republican Party have manufactured this war. It exists in their minds.
It does.
And that's it.
And it has no effect on their day-to-day life other than it just upsets them and gets them worked up. It really doesn't. I've known so many people who will just get so caught up in the latest culture war, whatever it is, whether they're mad at Bud Light or Target or whatever the case may be. And at the end of the day, I'm like, that doesn't have any effect on your life and how you feed your family, though. It really doesn't. And they get caught up in that. And while they're focused on these culture wars, these type of projects are being written and they're looking forward to implementing it. So I think it's something people definitely needs to take a longer look at and dive into and realize that people like me and you aren't just trying to spread hyperbole. We're just trying to raise awareness.
They've been very clear about what they're going to do, and they've laid it out in this plan. And the fact that people don't want to read it or don't want to see it or want to dismiss it as alarmist doesn't change the reality of it. The fact this is what they've said they are going to do. Washington Post reported, I don't know how long ago now, but that they're, he's going to invoke the Insurrection Act, and allow him basically to take the U.S. military and use them as his own private personal police force.
Yeah.
Right? And so, like you said, to your point about earlier, cherry picking the Constitution, things here and there. And I look at people and I'm like, so what if he decides to cherry pick one day and say, well, we really need to get rid of the Second Amendment because that threatens our country.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And these are arguments that I've had with people over the years, and they've always pointed to things and said, hey, we can't have this because that'll lead to communism. I remember, it was always like, Obamacare was socialism. It would lead to communism. That's where it would take us. And the same people that had those arguments with me are now perfectly okay with this. And I've actually had them say to me, yeah, we're cool with it. I mean, if he does what we want to do, we're good. And I'm like, yeah, but what if the day comes that he decides to turn it on you? What if something about your lifestyle rubs them the wrong way one day and suddenly they say, we're coming after you? The thing is, to me, what freedom is everybody having the right to live however they want to, be themselves, worship whatever God, vote for whatever politician, be whoever you are. You can't, the minute you start trying to take it away from one, you risk losing it all for yourself.
That's perfectly stated. I mean, people don't realize that if one of us isn't free, none of us are free.
Exactly.
If one group isn't free, none of us are free.
Yeah.
Because that's how the system is set up and is supposed to work. Now, it's had its evolution since its inception, over the years, but the path that it's on now, it's really, really dark. It's really dark. And Trump and his ilk will absolutely turn on a dime. Once you give them the power, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
They'll take what they want, and there won't be anything you can do about it at that point. There won't be anything you can do about it at that point.
It's so strange.
They're so blind. They're so blind to it.
They really are, and it's as though they live in this bubble where they think that democracy is just whatever they decide. It's like it's like they don't realize, hey. Because I was reading about them wanting to, let Trump run again in 2028, and they were basically saying, hey, we have the right if we're enthused by him and we're happy with him, then we have the right to to let him, run for a third term. And I'm like, no, that's not how it works. Just because you're enthused by a candidate doesn't mean that you get to change the rules. I mean, I could easily sit here and say, hey, man, I'm enthused about, let's bring Barack Obama back and just let him consecutively run for president over and over. I could say that, and I'm sure they wouldn't go for it. So it's like, I don't know. It's, the stuff they say just leaves me scratching my head going, how can you say that? Because like I said, once you open the door, okay, if you want to keep Trump in power from now on because he enthuses you and you're happy with him, anyone can say that about any candidate.
Oh, absolutely, they could. And it goes back to your point earlier about the Constitution and how and he's ready to do away with it and do away with it. He's ready to keep the parts that might benefit him in a given position or argument and subvert everything else.
Yeah.
And people don't understand. It's like, well, yeah, maybe we do need to suspend parts of the Constitution to get our country back under control. Okay. Well, what if Trump decides to suspend a part of the Constitution that protects the thing that you're interested in? Yeah. Oh, well, he wouldn't do that. Well, how do you know? Because we have the Constitution.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly.
I mean, how do you argue with that kind of circular logic?
You really can't. You really can't. And but we're going to keep trying. That's the thing about it. I think I want to let folks know that we just kind of scratched the surface today and read a little bit of the introduction and let people know what it is they got in mind. But we definitely want to come back and dive into some of the promises they've made and some of the layouts that they have, because like you said, it'll blow your mind when you really dive into it.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I'm looking forward to those discussions. I like to just break it down into chunks. Let's take a look at pieces and parts of it here and help people understand what it's really about, because it is pretty freaking scary.
Yeah, it truly is. Well, Trey, I appreciate you being here with me today, man. And we're definitely going to dive deeper into this at a later date. So you guys stay tuned and we'll catch you next time.
All right, man. Hey, take care.
And folks, I just wanted to remind you guys that you can follow Texas Trey. He's got his own YouTube channel right here on YouTube. It is at The Texas Trey. He's also on the TikTok app as Texas.Trey. So be sure to find him and give him a follow, subscribe to his channel, and keep tuning in here, because he and I are going to continue to break down Project 2025.